All right, welcome everybody to this week's Entrepreneurship Seminar. I'm really excited to introduce Lindie Royall, the founder of Little Poppy Co. in just a minute. But first I have a few announcements. First of all, thank you and congratulations to everybody who entered the Southern Utah Speed Pitch. I hope to have that extra credit up by the end of this week, so you'll see it reflected in Canvas. But if you didn't know, I don't know where he went, but can Nathan Olson stand up real quick? Yeah, so Nathan in the back, one of your classmates, he entered that competition and he ended up taking second place. So round of applause, Nathan, way to go. It's really great. For his company, Hold Your Horses. So it just goes to show that, you know, by a little bit of effort and practice, you can actually win real resources for your business ideas. So we're really proud of you, Nathan. Okay, a couple other extra credit opportunities that are coming up this month. So for those of you that have been emailing me and asking about, hey, what can I do to make up for missed attendance or missed quizzes or whatever, these are your two opportunities. The first one is to enter Bootstrap Your Business. The deadline is October 18th. I'll post the application link in Canvas, so make sure you check in Canvas. But it's an online application form where you're talking about a potential business idea. It'll take you maybe 15 minutes to fill that out. If you've got questions about it, you can come meet with me, and I'm happy to walk you through that and help you know what successful entries look like. So that's due October 18th. The actual competition is on Thursday, October 22nd at 5 p.m. Again, I'll post all of this in Canvas. But that, if you enter that, even if you don't pitch on Thursday night, if you enter it, I'll give you a makeup attendance, quiz, and presenter evaluation. Okay, so it'll make up for like a week's worth of work. The second extra credit opportunity is to enter Opportunity Quest. Now, this is a business model competition that's similar to the Bootstrap Your Business competitions that we run in the Grit Center, but it's bigger. So instead of winning up to $500, you could win up to $2,000 or even $3,000 for your business idea. It's a little bit more work. There's a 3-page executive summary that you've got to submit, and that deadline is October 26th. So again, I'll post all this in Canvas so you can see it. If you enter Opportunity Quest, I will also give you a week's worth of extra credit, quiz, presenter evaluation, and attendance if you need it. There is possibly a third extra credit opportunity tonight at 7 o'clock if you attend a watch party for the vice presidential debates and send me a paragraph afterward about which candidate you think would be more favorable for entrepreneurship and small business and why. I'm not totally sure where that's happening yet. I'm waiting for details on that. So again, watch Canvas tonight. If you're interested in that, I'll post it this afternoon. But I think that's going on tonight somewhere on campus at 7 p.m. You'll have to scan in through the app, and I'll get an attendance record of who showed up from this class. Okay, without further ado, I'd love to introduce our guest speaker for today, Lindie Royall. Lindie is one of the co-founders, along with Becca Grider, of Little Poppy Co. Little Poppy Co. is a monthly baby bow subscription company that was founded in 2015. Their bow subscription, the first of its kind, was a hit among moms with baby girls, which led to rapid growth. During the last 5 years, Little Poppy has transformed from a startup to a multi-million-dollar brand and is currently number 805 in Inc.'s top 5,000 fastest growing private companies in America. And Lindie is married and has 4 beautiful children. So she's a great example of a successful mompreneur whose life, I'm sure, is extremely busy. So please welcome Lindie Royall.
Thank you. Right. That's nice. Okay, I can take this off, right? Okay. Hi, I am Lindie Royall, and I'm super excited to be here. I love talking about business, and I hate talking about myself, but it's just a really fun opportunity. I don't get to do this very often, so I'm really excited to be here. So I grew up in Richfield, Utah. I'm sure a lot of you know because they have that Snow College extension down there. Is anyone here from Richfield, by chance? My dad. Anyways, it's great. great place. This is my family. My husband, Cameron, who's here today, and then I have Henry and Nora, who are twins. They are turning 7 tomorrow. And then I have Calvin, who's 3, and I have Benny, who is 1. So they keep things crazy, and if you think you can't have 4 kids and also run 4 businesses, I'm here to tell you that you can. Your life is just a little bit of chaos. So before I jump into my story, I'm kind of curious about this class, and I want to know, is everyone in this class like a business major or some kind of business degree? Or can you take this class being like pre-med or science or something? All business, okay. Okay, sorry. So who, and like raise your hand if you're not, have like a business type degree you're going after. Okay, so quite a few of you. So are you taking it for fun, or are you taking it because you want to mesh the two things? Mesh the two? Okay, cool. So couple more questions. By raise a hand, how many in here want to start a business someday? Okay, how many in here think that they actually will start a business someday? Okay, if we have time at the end, I'd love to talk about the people that didn't raise their hand, why they think they won't, and then also people that did raise their hand, what you think will be the biggest challenge in starting a business, because I'm kind of curious. But has anyone in here started a business already? A few of you? Oh, that's really cool. Cool. Okay, so we'll start. So I would have loved to take in a class like this, but I went to SUU, and I did science. I was getting ready to start, and I'm like, well, do I do science or business? I liked both equally, but my parents are very successful business people, and neither of them graduated college. I think my dad wanted to be a physical therapist, maybe. So I thought, you gotta have a degree if you want to be a doctor, but you don't have to have a degree if you want to do business, so I kind of went that route. And I plowed through 4 years of school. I graduated. I was going to continue my education and do something medical, and I was exposed for the first time after I stopped my actual field in the medical, and I actually kind of hated it. I'm like, what am I doing? And I don't enjoy this. I didn't like it. And so I pause in my story, but I always tell people now, I'm like, if you don't know what you want to do, or you think you know what you want to do, like stop for a minute and go and try it and get some kind of experience or shadow someone and make sure that you actually like it. So you don't end up like me where you go 4 years in and then realize you were really good at science, but you actually hated the medical field. And plus, trying a bunch of different things is only going to create so many more opportunities for you guys. You know, you might meet a friend that you guys mesh really well and you start a business, or you might be in a place where you have a job where you realize something. So I finished college. I realized I don't really want to do medical, but I got a job at Hollister, which was way cooler back in the day. But I was a manager. They would hire you as a manager if you had a college degree, and it paid pretty well, and I needed to do something. And so I started working there, and I was kind of interested in the fact that Hollister uses their brand to sell their products. So like, it was the smell, and it was the loud music, and it was more about like the brand selling the product. And I thought that was super interesting. I loved looking at the numbers at the end of the day, and I was kind of like, you know, I think I want to go back to business. And my parents at the time, they always hired me whenever I needed a job, and they let me come back. And they were they do these trade shows. And you go to Atlanta, and there's like 3 ginormous buildings, and there's all these levels, and all these vendors show up, and they want to sell their product to buyers. And they're getting ready to go to a thing, and what they do, you rent like a 10 by 20 booth. You like make it all cute so that when the buyer's walking by, whether it's the buyer for Target or the buyer for the gift shop down the street, they like your product, they come in, they will ask you questions, and then hopefully they place an order. They were getting ready to head to a show, and for some unknown reason, I'd love to hear their side of it now, is they told me and my sister that we could have a table in their showroom, this little booth. They said, you can have a table, you can put whatever you want on it, and we didn't have anything to put on it right then. So we started like kind of looking, and I don't know, I think my sister was the one who found this DIY, and we're like, well, let's make magnet boards. we're gonna make a magnet board, and it doesn't look like a magnet board, and let's take it. So we make these magnet boards, we take them to the show, and we got orders for our magnet boards. And so then we come home, we're just stoked. But we need my parents' office to do all this because they had the tape guns and the boxes, things that we didn't know you had to pay for at that time. She lived in St. George, she was pregnant. I was living up in Salt Lake, and we would drive to Richfield on the weekends. We'd make magnet boards. And I mean, we would buy like 2x4 pieces of wood, and we'd cut them down to little sticks, and then we would chop them, and we'd cut the metal. My dad would sometimes help us cut the metal. And then we would, so we'd make them, and then we'd wrap them with fabric. And these things were like heavy, and they were so much work. And, we were shipping them out, and it was like every time you got another order, you were kind of like sad inside because you realized you had to make more. And it was going well, but my sister dropped off like right away. She's like, I don't want to do this. And I kept doing it for a few months, and then I realized, oh, I can't do this. My husband's getting ready to go to medical school. This isn't going to work out. So I went to my dad with a proposal. I said, this is how much I have in orders. If you can buy my business for this much money. It was probably a good deal. And he paid me, and I went my own way. And, I guess I should go. So on the left is the OG magnet board. This was the fabric wrapped. So my parents took it. They made 100 improvements. In the middle on the right are things that they do now. So it doesn't look like a magnet board. And they now are in TJ Maxx and Home Goods and all these big places and have been super successful with it. So it's kind of fun. We called it Mikey Lynn's because we didn't have a name like the day before we were headed to the show. And my sister was Mikey and I'm Lindie, so we just meshed our names and there was Mikey Lynn's. But once I stopped doing that, at the time I was working at a religious art manufacturing company. So I went back there and I was kind of like the secretary / office manager. And I was seeing orders come in, and I kind of saw it all, and I was like, someone needs to sell these online. They could do a really good job. There was kind of like a need for it. So I go home to my fiance at the time, and I said, we need to create a website. We've got to sell these pictures because we're the middleman. So we would get the order, we could send it to them, and they would create and drop ship. So we spent hours and hours and hours creating this website, putting in descriptions, getting everything ready, learning how to run ads, because we're like, we need to, when someone searches online for a piece of art, we need to pop up and then they'll buy it. And I kind of remember thinking that we had made it, because we would wake up and we'd sold a piece of art while we were sleeping, and we're like, we made $40 while we were asleep. And we just couldn't get past that. And we were just so excited. And this actually was a huge thing for us because my husband ended up starting medical school and was not working, and I had twins, and it created this source of income. And it was way easier than making magnet boards because if the product got damaged in shipping, well, we weren't responsible. They had to send a new one. So it was super simple and easy. So fast forward a few more years, now we're in my husband's second year of medical school. We're living in DC. I have 1-year-old twins, and I had decided to take the twins somewhere. We lived on the 3rd story of a building, and we were going to get in the car. I take my little girl, and I put her in, I buckle her in, and I look, I'm like, where'd your bow go? I just bought this bow, and it was expensive, and I was super annoyed. So I look in the car, look in the road, I walk all the way back to the top of, I go in my house, and I can't find the bow, and I'm like, this is so dumb, because I just bought that bow. And I'm like, I just need someone to send me bows every month. And I'm like, I wonder if a bow subscription exists. So that night I went home, get on my computer, and I search, and it doesn't exist. I'm like, okay. So, and I talked about it for a few months. I'm like, okay, what's the right amount of bows? What's the right price? And then one day I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. So I go to the craft store. I don't own a sewing machine. I don't know how to sew a bow. I still don't know how to sew a bow. And I had found a Pinterest tutorial on how to use a glue gun to make bows. So I was like, well, I'll just test it out with my glue gun, and if I think people are going to be interested, then I'll teach myself how to sew. So I go to the craft store, I buy all my fabrics, come home, but if I'm going to start a subscription, I got to pretend this isn't my first month. So I created these are my past months, and like had these, like, this is what I shipped last month, and this is what I shipped 2 months ago, when really I never shipped a bow. And I didn't even know if anyone was going to subscribe. So I created my website. I make these glue bows, and then I create my Instagram account, because I'm like, how is someone going to learn about Little Poppy Co.? So I had decided that how I would expose people to Little Poppy Co. is I was going to do the classic follow and unfollow on Instagram. And back then Instagram was a little more friendly to that, but it still didn't like it. So I had figured out like the perfect calculation of how many people I could follow in an hour and how many people I had to unfollow in an hour to keep like my numbers not looking like I'm following like 16,000 people. But also I didn't want to like unfollow someone right after I followed them. So I had this like perfect system, and I'd like nailed it. So I'd set my alarm for every hour, and I'd get on my phone, I'd follow 40 people, and I'd unfollow 30 people. And what everyone has Instagram, and if someone follows you, what do? You click over, you want to see their picture, you want to see if you know them, you always read their bio, maybe you look at their pictures, and that's what people were doing. They're clicking over, and they're like, a bow subscription, Little Poppy Co., a stylish bow subscription, sign up for 3 bows, delivered to your door for $11.99. And it was interesting enough that people followed. And it was interesting enough that some people followed, and then they clicked over and they subscribed. And so I had figured out how to get people to see my brand and how to get them to subscribe. So, and it's funny because if you went to an Instagram class now or even a business class and they were talking about social media, they'd be like, oh, that's a big no-no. And I'm like, well, it got me my first 2,000 subscribers, and it got me my first 15,000 followers on Instagram. So I'm like, I feel like it's like a hustle instead of a no-no. But, so we do that. So we get 50 subscribers the first month, and I'm like, okay, I think I have a good idea. I'm like, I think that this is going to work. And I had sent out my first month. I was back in here in Utah visiting, and I was with my sister-in-law, and she was a sewer. And I'm like, hey, why don't you come help me? Why don't you come sew? Because at the time we did 2 felt bows, which you could glue, and 1 sewn bow. It was like made of fabric. It was a little fancier. I'm like, I'll keep making the glued bows because I'm good at the glue gun, and you make the fabric bows, and then we'll ship them to each other, and like this is what we'll do. And she's like, okay. So she came on board, and would do that. And we did this for about 3 months. Me and her were making our bows and sending them to each other and just kind of doing it ourselves. We'd switch off like social media and customer service weeks, and we were just kind of like managing it that way. And then with a subscription, it's like the demand goes up every month. So it's not like one month you're like, I'm gonna go on vacation and I'm gonna just make half as many bows. Like, you couldn't do that because you at least had to make the exact same amount, if not more, if you wanted to open up more spots. So we decided to go with the stay-at-home mom kind of method. So we find moms that know how to sew, that want a little extra work, and we started teaching them and distributing it that way. And it started being like where one mom would bring their bows back, like, oh, these look great. Another mom would bring them back, and we're like, oh, those look way different than the other mom's bows. And we had one mom who'd bring it back who was making them at our kitchen table, but also cooked curry in her kitchen, and they like smelled so bad, and so we're like Febrezing and putting them in the dryer. And then we had another mom who'd show up on the day and be like, oh, my kid was sick, I only got 30% of them done. And we're like, well, we have to ship these out like in 2 days, we have to have them. And so we knew that wasn't going to work long term. So we started kind of asking around, and we heard that the Gunnison prison had a sewing facility. And so it just so happened that my aunt's ex-husband had visited the prison and had worked in this sewing facility. So I call him. He'd been out recently, and I call him. I said, "What's your thoughts on it? Would you trust your business here?" And he said nothing but great things to say. And he said, "But if you're going there, see if Biz is there. See if Biz is still there." I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "I don't know his first name because that's his gel name. Everyone has like a gel name, and Biz was his name." I'm like, "Okay." So we show up to the prison, and me and my sister-in-law get out of the car, and they open the gate, and we walk through, and no one's coming. And we're like, "Where are we?" And anyway, so then they come out, and they escort us in, and this is an all-male prison, and they have this sewing facility. And we were so impressed because they had 8 like state-of-the-art sewing machines, and they had this cutting system that was so efficient, and like it was just like we were just super impressed. And so we sat down with them, like, is this going to work? And he's like, I think that this would be a good fit for us. And so he's telling us the program was amazing to work with. These inmates would have to be on good behavior, and then they would have to apply for a job. They'd be interviewed, and if they were hired, they actually made money working in this facility, and they got to send it home to family. They got to use it for restitution, and then they left with some kind of life skill. So we loved working with them. So we sit down, and he's telling us all of this, and we're just like, this is awesome. And so then him and another girl are like, well, who should we? I'm like, well, is Biz here? He's like, well, how do you know Biz? And I'm like, well, my uncle, his name is, and he doesn't recognize the name because that's, no one uses the name. And they're like, oh, is it red? I'm like, well, he has red hair, so that's probably it. So they go get Biz and bring him in, and then Biz was the guy on our job. So it worked out. So we worked with them. After a few months, they kind of said, we're going to hit capacity at about 10,000 sets of bows, which is making 30,000 bows for us. And so we kind of knew that. And as we got closer, we were with them for about a year. And as we got close to that point, we started kind of like, okay, what's our next move? And the whole way we were just a new idea. It was both subscriptions, people hadn't heard, and we were seeing a lot of growth. And we were just like, we'd ship each month, we're like, how do we pull that off? Because we were just like barely getting by and barely making enough product and just like barely getting by every single month. It was crazy, and we found the prison right at the right time. And so we had heard about a local company in Salt Lake City that their whole thing was producing overseas and making sure you had a really, they had a team in Salt Lake, they had a team overseas, they had a QC team overseas as well. And so they make sure that you get a really good product over there. So we started working with them, and what was cool about moving overseas was that it opened up a lot of different doors. So before we had to buy our fabric that any other person had access to, so there were some times where we'd have a same bow as someone else. But now we're over there and we can manufacture our own fabric. We can choose the exact color of our linen and have it dyed. We can choose how thick the stripes are. We could choose anything. And so it really kind of set us apart because now we're making exclusive bows that no one else could ever make. And so it was really cool. And we definitely had a transitional, they didn't get the detail of the handmade product right away. And unfortunately, we have these very firm deadlines where we're having to, well, we don't have time to keep going back and forth on samples. You've got to send this product by this date because we have to ship it out. So we had a couple months where it was like, so it wasn't that great. And we had the prison making every other, every third month, trying to give them more time to perfect the bows. And now we're in this groove where, we've set up a channel now where they've been able to scale with us, and they will make 40 to 50,000 sets of bows a month. So they're producing 150,000 bows every month. And the fabric is opened up, but we also, we have a village in India that when we supply them with just one of our bows from our set, if we say make the fabric for one of the bows, we are giving them work for an entire month. And we have fabrics coming from London and Japan. So it's really fun to think of all the things that go into the set now and all the things that we can do because we have the numbers to produce the quantities of fabrics we need. But how it works is they're made in China, and they put them on the card, they put them in a clear sleeve, and then they ship them over to us. And so in our office in Draper, we have about 30 employees. We have a fulfillment team, we have a customer service team, we have the fulfillment manager, office manager, we got the social media, design. So we have all these sides. So the bows show up, and the fulfillment team will do a second QC on them. So as they're packaging them, they kind of glance at them, make sure everything looks good before they put them in the pink bags. And also another thing, when we set up our business, initially we only had 2 SKUs. So there's only 2 products. Now we have 4 because we've made the bows smaller and bigger. But it's simple. So when it comes time to fulfill, we can be like, okay, we're going to print out 20,000 labels that are all going to this size on nylon, and our team can quickly glance, package, and they'll package them all, and they'll set them aside, and then when it goes time for labeling, they'll lay them all out perfectly. And one girl will have the big roll of labels, and she just slaps them on and moves down the row, and another girl's pushing them off and refilling the table, and it goes super fast and efficient. And if we had to, luckily we don't have to eyeball every order. Most of our orders just super quick to fulfill. So that's really cool and makes it fun. Little Poppy Co.'s existed now for 5.5 years, and I think that when you start a business or when you run a business, there's so much tweaking, and you have to know that when I start my business, and I'm the only Bow subscription, and then when there's 100 Bow subscriptions now, I have to be different, or I have to be more affordable, or I have to have you always have to be tweaking, and that's still like what we still do today. In this last year, we've done a lot of tweaking, which can be negative, which a lot of it was, and then you find the things that are positive, and you try and just keep making your business better and better as you go. And I have like a couple friends that have started businesses recently who will come to me like they're at the very beginning, they're like, this product keeps breaking, and I'm getting like these mean emails, and I just like want to give up. And I'm like, well, if you think that my product on day 1 was as good as my product was on, year 5, like you're crazy. Like you've got to absorb all the feedback you're getting, and you've got to make changes, and then you're going to keep perfecting your product, and it's going to be, it's going to get better and better. And so I feel like that's how Little Poppy Co. has been, is that we still to this day are trying new things and, switching websites to see if we can get better conversions, and we're just kind of tinkering along the way. I should have showed you. This is my business partner, Becca, on the right. That was us. We used to go to New York about twice a year to meet with our fabric suppliers, but we haven't been for a while. And then, as he mentioned, we made Inc. 5000 list, which was a really fun kind of accomplishment that I'm super proud of. So that's Little Poppy Co. Because of Little Poppy Co., you just learn so much. You're able to absorb so much. In the beginning, when we decided to start running ads, I learned how to run the ads. I Googled, I read article after article, would try it, I'd see if it worked, and then I would make changes and I'd keep going. And then we grew where I didn't need to run the ads anymore, but I'm still, like even the person that runs our ads today, I'm on every phone call weekly, and I want to know, what are you doing, why are you doing it? Because a little bit selfishly, like I want to know because I want to apply it to the next business and the next business. And so this was a huge learning thing, and so I was able to take little things and keep applying it. So the next thing that I did was a fun little business called Prime Lovin'. My dad told me to not name it Prime Lovin', but it's a good name. So my accountant, when the first year was like, so what do you do at Prime Lovin'? Well, let me tell you. So Prime Lovin', I'm sure, again, all of you have Instagram. You guys follow someone who's promoting some kind of product where they say like, they spend like 5 slides saying why these are the best shoes ever. They tell you to swipe up if you want to buy them, and they make a percentage if you buy it. Even if you don't buy it, if you buy something else on the site, they're going to make money. So I saw that happening, and I'm like, well, what if we like try and figure out how to make it a little bit different? So it was me and my sisters, and we said, let's just stick with Amazon. Let's be like super specific to Amazon, and let's not show our face. Let's just quickly, like, here's the deal, or here's the product that we're liking, here's why we like it, swipe up. So that's what we kind of started doing. And how Amazon works specifically is they will give you about on average, 3 to 5% of whatever you sell for them. But like I said, if we're saying like, hey, buy these kids' pajamas, and they swipe up and like, oh, I don't like any of those colors, but I actually needed toilet paper and cleaning supplies and who knows what chocolate, we're going to get credited for that sell. So I love this business because we have no customers. There's no customer service. There is no product. It's so simple. And yesterday, the day before, I was kind of prepping this. I'm like, I wonder what if Amazon gives us some kind of number. And I went and looked, and to date on Amazon, we have sold $9.5 million worth of their stuff, which I'm like, that's just crazy that we're able to reach that many people, you know? So because of Prime Lovin', it opened up another opportunity, because now I'm on Amazon a lot. We would make these weekly guides, and we would, so say one day I'm saying, like, let's make a birthday rainbow guide. And so we'd make these guides, we put them on Pinterest to hopefully get some traction to our website. And I'm looking on Amazon, I'm like, there's no candles on Amazon. I'm like, why isn't there candles? Everyone needs candles, and it's kind of one of those things you maybe need quickly. And so I'm like, well, maybe we should make our own candles. So again, started figuring out, like, okay, should I just see what's available, you know, like Alibaba style? And I went and looked at what was available, and then I like searched harder, and like, oh, those are on Amazon. So I'm like, I got to do something different. So I, you know, chose the length, I chose the thickness, I chose every single color. I went back and forth on samples, and I manufactured a lot of candles. And was it Benny or Calvin? That the day I come home from the hospital from delivering them, China delivers like 40 packages, these huge, huge boxes of candles. We did rainbow, and then we did solid colors. So, and it worked. Amazon needed that product. And I had a program that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, but Amazon has programs where you can put in ideas, and it will tell you, like, this is what the demand is, and this is what the supply is. And so when I saw that there was no candles, I went and ran it through. And it had like a super high rating. I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. But that's just led to bibs, and it's led to little boy swim shorts, and it's led to balloons, linking party balloons, and to floaties. And now that's grown a whole nother business. And what's cool is Amazon takes a big fee, but they also bring the customer to you. So if someone's searching for candles, I'm going to pop up, and Amazon's going to take a cut because of that. But also now on this other end, we have Prime Lovin' that has tons and tons of followers, and now we can kind of risk-free bring in stuff because we know we can liquidate it. We can say, like, hey, the bibs are 40% off today, and we can sell a ton of them. So we have this unique reach that couples with this to make it a super kind of successful thing. What time is it? 1 o'clock? Okay. Yeah, so you said 1. But I want to pause for a minute and talk a little bit about the way my brain works when I'm starting a business, and all the things I think about, and how that you can see it apply in what I've done, and also you know, why things have failed. I'm able to look at this and kind of like, oh, well, I didn't have that kind of figured out. So in my head, there's like 3 categories. There's the idea, there's the pricing, and then there's kind of like the marketing section. Everyone, I think, feels like the idea is the most important part, but I feel like the execution on the idea is far more important than the idea. If you think about all my ideas, I didn't invent the magnet board. I didn't make bows. I just changed how they're delivered. The magnet boards, we changed how they looked. The affiliate, we just got super specific and kind of approached it a different way. So everything, I feel like you've got to have an idea, but you need to make it unique. So like what's there, and I don't want to tell anyone to copy someone, but when you see someone doing something super successfully, you need to look at that and be like, why? Like, okay, well, maybe it's a different product. Well, you know, it's like the cookie subscription, not cookie subscription, the cookie deliveries that are everywhere. Well, who needs donuts? I mean, that's a big thing. So it's looking at things that are doing really, really well, and like, well, how can I steal a piece of that? Like, what treat can I deliver? Or kind of just building off of that instead of thinking you have to invent this crazy new idea, you know? So pricing. The price needs to be right for the customer, but more importantly, the price needs to be right for you. Because it doesn't matter if you sold $10,000 in balloons on Amazon if it costs you $9,900 to do that, you know? So it's got to be right on both ends, and that's like super important. You don't want to waste your time developing an idea or building a website when you haven't nailed down that your product is actually going to be profitable and it's even going to sustain you long term, you know? And then marketing. How how will you get your idea in front of someone, and why are they going to buy it? So, like with the magnet boards, how I got it in front of someone is going to my parents' trade show. So there's different ways to get in front of someone's eyes. Little Poppyco, how I initially got in front of their eyes was I followed and unfollowed. You know, the art, we knew we had to run ads on Google. And so it's knowing, you know, it's not only how you're going to get in front of them, but then like what are they going to read that's going to convince them that they want to purchase or they want to subscribe. So my latest business that I want to quickly touch on and then come back to this, it's called Sunnie Press. And this is about a year old, and 2 years before it, I sat down with the person I run this with, and we were like, what is this? What is the boys subscription? Like, Little Poppyco, it's doing super well. People love this. What can we do with the boys? And we talked like super late one night, and we were just like, she's like, cars. All the boys love cars. She has 2 boys. I have 3 boys. I'm like, yes, my boys love cars. But like, cars are super accessible. You can get it at the grocery. You can basically get them anywhere, and they're like 99 cents for a cute Hot Wheels car. So I'm like, that's like it's missing like the uniqueness of the idea, and like, why would anyone, like, how do you market that? Because that's just out there. So we kept talking. I'm like, okay, we need a map. We need a map to go with the car, because then now we've changed it. Now we have something unique. Because yeah, they're getting a car, which is like a bonus, but now they're getting this really cool map that they can drive their car on. And so I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. So we're like, kind of like, okay, we've nailed the idea. And so then we went to kind of the pricing section. And I had just attempted a business where I had to roll paper up and put it in a tube, and it didn't do well because the tube was so expensive and the shipping was so expensive, and like I hadn't nailed the pricing. I hadn't nailed a lot of things, but that was one of them, and I just knew, I'm like, so can we fold the paper? But then like, where do you put the car? And we just couldn't figure out, because it has to be priced right for the mom or she's not going to subscribe. So we kind of just like, it just dropped. But we talked about it for probably a couple weeks. Now, a year ago, she's my sister-in-law, she came to me and she wants to start a different business. And this business was printing posters that you'd hang in your house. And so I'm kind of going through, she's telling me her thoughts, I'm telling her my thoughts. I'm like, you really just need to figure out if you can get it made and what price, because that will determine like if this is even worth, considering. So I'd send her to find a printer. She comes back and she's like, okay, this is what I learned from this printer. And she's like telling me everything she learned. She's like, they'll print this really big piece of paper. They have a folding machine. They'll fold it up. It actually is like really flat, so it will ship first class mail, so it's really inexpensive to ship. And they do everything. You send them the artwork and they'll print, fold, address, and label, and ship. And I'm like, and it was just like a light bulb went back to this initial business. I'm like, oh my gosh, this was the missing piece 2 years ago because we couldn't get the price right. And I'm like, let's forget the car and let's just do a map subscription for kids. And so going back to this, we had the idea. Now we've nailed the pricing. So now it's like, okay, well, how are we going to market this? And we kind of came up with like the little slogan of less screen time, more creativity. Is anyone in here a mom? Okay, just me. But when you're a mom, you have a lot of guilt, and you want your kids to like not be on watching TV, and you really want them to be creative. So it was almost like this one-liner, coupled with my video of me recording my kids playing with it. It like worked because the mom's like, oh, this will make me I think it's a little bit of guilt, but it's like, it'll make me be a better mom if I subscribe to this. And my kids are gonna be so creative, and and so we kind of went with that idea, and then we launched it. And so how I look at it is there's like pricing, there's marketing, there's idea, and all of that. If you can get all that right, then it leads to your first sell or customer. And your first customer can't be your grandma or your friend of your friend. It has to be someone who followed your channels and then purchased, because otherwise, if you don't create that, then it can't be recreated. So my favorite part of business is the idea to the first sell, because once you do that once, then what you've set up can happen again and again and again. And so we launch it, and it's great. And then not luckily, we benefited greatly from COVID, because that even was like added pressure on these moms to educate at home. And then a lot of kids didn't go back to school, so it's actually been like we got a little bit lucky that people took to it the way they did. So that's a little bit about Sunnie Press and kind of going through my thought process. And I'm sure there are things I'm missing, but like when I have an idea, I sit there and like we'll work it through in my head for like weeks and weeks and like trying to find all the pieces. And sometimes it'll be like a year later, I'm like, remember that idea? I'm telling my husband, like, remember that idea I told you about a year ago? Well, I perfected it. And I'll tell him, he's like, you're not starting another business this year. But last little bit that I want to talk about was if I hadn't have started my first business, I wouldn't have started my second business. And if I hadn't had experience starting 3 businesses, I would have never known or maybe been confident enough to start Little Poppy Co. And then Little Poppy Co., because I had so much experience and learned so much there, I was able to keep going. And like all my business, like I've started probably 10 in the last 8 years, and are all of them still going? No. And are all of them as successful as Little Poppy Co.? No. But I feel like you have to try. And even if you fail, even the ones that failed, I'm able to look back and be like, well, why was that? What would I do differently? Should I bring it back? And you learn so much. And I totally get the idea of like, you don't want everyone around you to know you failed. And it's funny because like when I started Little Poppy Co., my business partner that owns 50% of the business with me didn't even know it was me for a month, because I was like, well, if it fails, nobody will know. I don't even know if my mom knew for a while, because I'm like, I just would rather have it fail quietly than everyone knowing. But at the same time, it's like you don't really need to tell everyone, because if you're going to set it up where people that don't know you are going to purchase or subscribe, and then that's what's really important. But sometimes you can share, and that can be shared, and there's a ripple effect there. But I see a lot of people launch a business, they have all this support, and then it just kind of dies because they didn't figure out how to get people to subscribe that they haven't personally told, or wasn't their mom's friend or something like that. So I think, and I'm still this way, I get intimidated by people that have bigger companies than me, and you think that maybe they're doing it better, but you focus on that, and so you don't try, you don't even attempt, and you gotta try it. You gotta stop looking at them and their success, because it's totally different, and the opportunities that I was given are completely different than the opportunities you were given, and so I might have had a head start, and so you've got to focus on you and your path and how you're going to succeed. And even if you don't, you take that and then you apply it to your next thing and your next thing until you're running a million businesses. But what time is it? Oh my gosh, this is perfect. So I'd love to, if you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. And I'd also, if you don't have any questions, then if any of you want to talk about the question I asked at the beginning, I don't know that I have the right answer, but selfishly, I'd love to hear why. Maybe you're afraid, or maybe you think that you can't start a business. But yeah, who has a question for me? That's not my dad. Yeah. I think the very first one we had a little bit of help, but now websites, like you can get on Shopify and they make it so dang easy to create a website. And there is like article after article after article teaching you how to do it. So maybe you're not gonna have like a customized website, but you're going to have, you can create a website, yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't really know if people wanted a Bo subscription, but I knew I wanted one. So I was like, okay, if I'm a purchaser, then there's got to be more people like me. And that's most of my businesses that I've started. I start for like very inexpensive, because I'm like, I'll just test it and then see how it goes. So that's kind of the approach I took. Was I would like it, so there's got to be other people out there that would like it. And I just went and spent a couple $100s on my fabric and scissors, and I decided to test it. So I didn't know. I mean, I got maybe a little lucky. And it's funny because we surveyed our customers like a year or two in, and we said, why do you subscribe for Little Poppy Co.? Because for for me, it was created because I was busy. I had twins, I didn't have time to shop, and I didn't want to worry about that. So it was created because of a convenience thing. But what we learned is the number one reason people subscribed was because of style. They loved what the bows looked like. Number 2 is convenience. So then what does that do to us? That shifts us. Instead of pushing like, this is easy for you, we pushed, hey, your baby's gonna be super cute at the park when you have a little Poppyco bow on. So we kind of shift how we market it a little bit because we heard from them that they weren't subscribing for the same reason it was created. They were subscribing because they thought they were really cute bows. Does that answer your question? Is anyone else? Yeah. You have the what? No, I didn't. So we, okay, yeah, so the question was, didn't you have to create the product before you sold it? So essentially it's a high risk. So the bows and with the maps, I launched the website and they had until this day to order. There was a cutoff. So once that cutoff hit, then I went and bought the fabric, exactly what I needed, or I submitted those orders to the company. So to the printing. So when the numbers were really low, each map was significantly higher than when we've hit bigger numbers. But we kind of knew that. We priced it knowing at this price it doesn't quite make sense, but we're not losing money. But once we get to 500 and 1,000 and up, then we get to like that really good sweet spot. So maybe sometimes you'd have to buy before, and I know a lot of people that do. I've been fortunate that I've been able to kind of gauge it a little bit before I did. Yeah. Sorry, what's that? Oh. Did I collect any primary data before? No, I mean, it was just kind of gauging what, like I would see, you see things and you realize that there's a need or it's something you need. So that's kind of how I did it. But like the whole Sunnie Press thing, essentially, and I always say this, I'm like, I'm selling a piece of paper. And some people will cancel and say, this is just a piece of paper. I'm like, well, yeah, you're correct. And so it's not like that I necessarily needed that. I just was like, well, what can we do I feel bad my little boys aren't getting a package in the mail. And that's kind of where it like kind of stemmed it. And then it was figuring out, okay, well, what will the mom subscribe for and kind of figuring that out. But no, I didn't like do anything to collect data before. That probably would have been better.
Okay, we got to cut it off.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Thank you guys.